to panel one of the day, and here we are going to be covering a very, very important topic: best practices in hiring, managing, and motivating your sales team. I know this is a challenge for everyone in the cloud services community, and I have some fabulous panelists to help us talk through what they're doing and what we should all be doing on the topic. And I'm going to introduce them one by one, and then I am going to give them a moment to talk about their company, their sales environment, so when they're answering the questions, we can put it all into context. So our first panelist is David DeCamelis, and he's the VP in Sales and Marketing at Platte River Networks. David was recognized as a top 10 salesperson in Colorado by COBIZ magazine. He founded the Women in Technology Scholarship in 2012 with Denver Public Schools, and he's a global traveler. He skis, he scuba dives, he hikes, and he eats every conceivable kind of cuisine, and says he thoroughly enjoys drinking lots of wine with it. So, David, over to you. Tell us a little bit about Platte River.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be here. So, Platte River Networks, we were established in 2002, and we started offering cloud services way back in the early 2000s, starting with cloud security. If anyone remembers MX Logic back in the day, that were acquired by McAfee. We launched our full managed services platform roughly 12 years ago called Intuition. We're based in Denver, and we manage full IT for about 100 businesses around the country in all industries. We like to focus on manufacturing, financial engineering, and healthcare. And currently I have a sales team of 3 people, and I have a marketing team of 3 people. I'm wearing hats in both areas. We did successfully grow during the pandemic. We were able to add a salesperson, and I'm looking to add another salesperson before the end of the year and another one next year. So I hope to offer some expertise on best practices in hiring and managing and motivating and keeping those salespeople, but I'm also excited to hear from the other panelists because we can always learn. So thank you, Rob.
Fabulous. David, thank you very much. And our second panelist is Rich Rivara, and he's the CEO of Wave 6. And Rich has over 25 years experience building professional services companies. He's focused on helping companies adopt a cloud now mindset with over 15 years of experience in the Salesforce.com ecosystem. And he's currently leading Wave 6, a fast-growing Salesforce.com system integrator focused on transportation and logistics and manufacturing. So, Rich, fill us in a little bit on Wave 6.
Thanks, Rod. Good morning, everyone. So Wave 6 is a system integrator for Salesforce.com. It's been around for over 10 years. It's gone through several iterations. I've been in this role for the last 2 years and reshaping us into more of a project-based, vertical-focused company. Right now, I have a sales team of 6, and that's comprised of inside sales and outside sales. Our outside sales people also take on some account management responsibility as well. It's a very timely discussion because I'm in Q4 of my fiscal year, working budgets for next year, where we're going to grow this team by at least 3. So look forward to the panel. Thanks.
Fabulous. Look forward to talking to you. And our third panelist is Trevor Williams, and he's the Global Director, Cloud Service Providers at Hitachi Vantara. And Trevor is responsible for managing Hitachi's global cloud service providers. He successfully grew Hitachi's cloud partner revenue from $129 million in 2018 to $150 million in 2019. He's proud that he's modernized Hitachi's approach from being a sell-to organization to a more collaborative strategic partner organization. He had undergraduate studies at Brunel University and postgraduate education at Kingston University in London. and Trevor enjoys cycling and is an avid skier. So, Trevor, tell us a little bit more about Hitachi.
Yeah, good day, Rod, and thanks very much. And good morning, good evening, everybody on the call. So Hitachi Vantara are a global organization. I think as Rod had pointed out, we're an organization that has had to change and adapt over the last 15 years. And one of the reasons is that we spend a lot of time selling to very large multinationals, very large Fortune 100, 500 organizations. But the one thing that we realized several years ago is that obviously the shift to cloud and managed services quite obviously was starting to gather a lot of pace. But our organization was quite happy to continue to grow the revenues in a traditional sense. So as an organization, we had to really start to instigate change, and we really had to kind of look at the business and understand what type of skills we had inside the organization, look at how we can adapt those skills within that organization to enable us for our future state. As anyone can imagine, that is a difficult task to do. And of course, throughout the organization, not just myself, a number of stakeholders all looking at the skills that we needed to hire and the skills that unfortunately that we needed to let go. But as we've now started to move much more heavily towards managed services as well as cloud service, particularly through our partners, we've seen significant growth, particularly because of the pandemic and particularly because a lot of our service provider partners have increased the number of clients that they have that they've recruited. Unlike some of the other panelists, we're hiring. I have a team of 6, and of course, the last 4 hires that I have never met them face to face, and that's a real challenge. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this in more detail during the call. So much of our engagements that we are having with my staff is all online. I'm sitting out here in London, and of course, I have some resources here in the UK, which is great. We can meet in a car park somewhere, but nonetheless, it doesn't address the bigger picture that we need to address for motivating our staff. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Looking forward to getting the questions from the panel, and of course yourself, Rod. And I'm looking forward to a successful event. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Trevor. And our 4th panelist is Joe Cerrone, and he's the Senior Channel Account Manager at Webroot. And Joe is a senior member of the MSP account team. He works with partners to deepen the understanding of today's threat landscape. He strategically customizes a security game plan that will work for them as well as their clients, and assists in streamlining the evaluation process. And as a native New Englander, Joe enjoys both skiing out east as well as the Colorado Rocky Mountains, which my team will love as they're based in Colorado. So, Joe, over to you. Tell us a little bit more about Webroot.
Yeah, Rod, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me here today. Webroot, we are very much a global company, but we've been around since 1997, and really over the last, I'd say, decade plus, have put an emphasis on our managed service provider program. We have about 16,000 managed service providers with us at this point. But really, once the kind of pandemic hit, we went from a very much in-office sales force to now a very much so virtual sales force. As Trevor had mentioned and some of the other panelists, we have members on the team that we haven't met with quite yet. And, this week I'll get to meet a few of those as we kind of start to do an annual sales meeting, but then I won't see them again for probably a year, as we've kind of switched our business flow to primarily remote from a sales perspective. And this opens a lot of opportunities as well as kind of closes some doors that you have to be aware of. So I'm very excited to share what we've learned and really learn from these other panelists and from you guys as well, based off of your questions. So appreciate you having me here.
Fabulous. Great to have you here. So again, like we have in the opening session this morning, if anyone wants to ask a question, add to the comment, etc., please use the chat and questions on the top right of your screen. We want to make this as interactive as possible. As you saw from the slight internet glitch we had in the opening panel, this is definitely a very, very live event. So I'd like to start with you, David. and you talked about your sales team. I mean, how do you define the sales team you actually need at Platte River? And has the pandemic changed the nature of the salespeople that you need and the skill set that they have?
So to clarify, I mentioned 3 people on my sales team. That's my hunting team. We also have an inside team of 3 and soon to be 4 that are the technical account managers. So the way we work as a hunting team, starting with marketing and lead generation, is we're going after all the new business. So we're looking for companies with anywhere from 25 to 500 employees that are willing to outsource their entire IT department. So the first challenge is finding people that can hunt in this new environment. A lot of hunting, especially considering probably 85% of our revenue comes from the front range of the Rocky Mountains. So let's just call it, Metro Denver. Mm-hmm. And dealing with those small businesses, that face-to-face is really important. My hunters also would go, and me included, go to a lot of local events, be involved in the community. Networking was huge. It's a big part of how we generate leads. Doing lots of events also in person were huge. So when the pandemic hit, talk about sucking up the pipeline. I mean, it just stopped. There was no more networking events. We also had to change our messaging, taking all the selling and aggressive reach outs to the leads and prospects. I replaced it with thought leadership, with how to help them during the pandemic, created a lot of infographics, had my hunters reach out and just don't bug them, just help them, offer to help, communicate. That was a big change. That was a big shift. The second thing we saw with the sales team was they had to get LinkedIn savvy. And yes, my salespeople were on LinkedIn, but now you really have to get LinkedIn savvy. You have to find your LinkedIn prospects. You have to start trickle campaigns with good messages, get them to connect with you, start liking their posts, wishing them happy birthdays and congratulations on their work anniversaries, sending them good thought leadership, and building the relationship with them. I also had them to do more cold calling, which we kind of had stopped doing, and not completely. I just felt like it had been kind of dying out. But with the pandemic, it's one of the only ways to reach people was cold calls. So what I had to do for the salespeople was to create a whole new activity tracker, and they have daily goals on touches. It's through social media, it's through email, it's through sending our blog, our newsletter, it's through phone calls. The whole dynamic of the salesperson, the activity they have to do to generate leads and close business completely changed. The final adaptation was presenting proposals virtually. And it's a big difference when you're in the room and you can read all the decision makers and read their body language and shift on the fly, to suddenly you just see your presentation and that's it. You can't get that interaction. So having to train our sales team not only to have the right tools, but also on presenting in a different way, asking more questions, making sure that our proposals were virtual deliverable. It's changed the entire sales process.
Fabulous. And talking about tracking, just catching up on that one, David, is there a particular tool you're using, or because remote tracking is a huge issue for many people in the community? Is there, as I say, is there a specific tool you're using for that?
Exactly. I actually had to vet, HubSpot. I wanted something that would interact with ConnectWise, which is our PSA, our industry-specific application. And unfortunately, it's not the best CRM. So what I ended up landing on was MindMatrix, and it fully integrates with ConnectWise. So it's tracking every activity that my salesperson is doing, and including every email, every LinkedIn touch, social media touch, what they're sending. I can queue up all the content for them. So if I want them to send out specific infographics, create campaigns, it's basically called a sales playbook. Plus, it also tracks that end user, and anytime they open anything, click on anything live. And it actually goes as far as queuing up my salespeople saying, hey, you should call this person, you should email this person, you should post. So it's a pretty cool platform. I highly recommend it. And it's only $500 a month. There's my sales pitch.
So, Trevor, I see you there. What have you seen? You talked in the intro about the fact that you've got a bunch of salespeople, you've never met them. What challenges has that posed in terms of managing them, motivating them, and how have you overcome those?
Well, I think similar to what David was talking about. I mean, firstly, when we actually hit the pandemic the first time, I think like most other people, we're all like a rabbit in the headlights, right? What are we going to do? How are we going to adapt? How are we going to pivot? And of course, one of the things that we wanted to also make sure we did is try and stay busy. And so, my team, so my extended team, really started focusing down on developing things like the sales playbooks, making sure that everything around our sales process was working, and everything that we weren't doing, we said, we'll put that in the too difficult to do box. We'll address that later. Developing sales tools and helping the guys to position our solutions a bit more robustly. We started to really double down on that because a lot of our activities just simply dried up. So we do have a lot of accounts in the field where, we are farming, but a lot of the stuff that we're doing is really generating new business, similar again to what David had mentioned. So we had to really then once we start to recover, is to look at how we wanted to develop and expand our pipeline. There's a number of things that we've done. Number one is we've been working with a lot of our distribution partners. So, companies like Arrow, Tech Data, we have a very good relationship on a traditional resale basis. And we really wanted to start to break into their as a service business with some of the solutions that we had to offer. So last year, we really started to focus on working with their as a service parts of the business. And of course, the guys that we hired, they're not technology salespeople, they are more as a service sales guys. So we want to make sure that they get engaged and build their relationships up with our distribution partners. But at the same time, we also need to look at how we build up pipeline of activities, right? What partners we can go after. So we work with a number of companies, particularly with an AI company. So it's like, anyone can imagine if someone gives you a whole load of URLs to go and have a look at, it's like, trying to paint the Golden Gate Bridge, right? It takes you a long time, you get to one side and you start all over again. But there are so many really good tools out there that if you're prepared to pay for them, that can do that analysis on your behalf and pull out some really, really strong data to give you some real positive leads in this space. So we ended up with over 2,000 leads that we not only identified some real serious buyers, but then we took those to our distribution partners. We come, bearing gifts. And so that really started to open up a dialogue between our distribution partners who have a lot more scale than we do in the market and in the field. So my guys really started to enjoy a strong relationship on the back of net new opportunities. But similar so with David mentioned, LinkedIn Navigator. We are strong proponents of LinkedIn Navigator. ZoomInfo as another one that we typically use to gather more information. So if you do find a hot lead, we want to make sure we do some of that homework beneath it. So we don't go in blind. We have some basic information. So LinkedIn Navigator helps you a lot. All the players on there. ZoomInfo helps you as well. Helps you kind of fill in some of the blanks. And so I think to keep people motivated in any organization, you've got to make sure you feed them with leads, because they don't want to sit there twiddling their thumbs all day long. Because, I always say, by definition, a lot of salespeople are lazy. But you've given them something to get their hands on, they will just grab hold of it and they will take the ball and run. But you've got to help them to help themselves. So I see myself as a sales manager. I think the sales manager is a slightly really weird term. It's really more about making sure that I fill their funnel. And help them to fill their funnel. But if they are struggling, we need to understand a little bit about why is it they're struggling. Is the funnel dried up? And I have to keep filling that funnel and help them to keep maintain that funnel. So those are the main challenges for me, and I think most challenges for a lot of sales guys out in the field, which is making sure that they have a funnel, but equally working with a lot of our sales reps in the field who have opportunities in existing accounts that we can also address.
Fabulous. And Rich, if you look at the pandemic, how's that changed or altered the way you approach sales?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rod. I think that beyond, call it, the societal impacts that we've seen customers having to adjust to a remote setting. some of the things that David and Trevor were talking about are super relevant in the sense of I'm on video now. As a customer, I may not have been on video ever. I'm used to dealing on the phone. You're giving sales proposal presentations where you're staring at a box that has a name in it versus even a person sitting there. So David, like you were saying, being able to gauge, read the room, right? That's what we're used to. We're used to meeting clients in the place where they want to meet in order for them to, for us to sell. A lot of that has changed. So I think adapting is key. I think that using some best practices along the way, the guys were talking about LinkedIn, my sales people are tied at the hip with LinkedIn. One thing I would add to that is I see it more now as also a referral engine. So when we're used to, hey, who do you know at this company? Is it like this other company? Do you know anyone within the C-suite or below that you can make an intro to? I see our sales team doing a lot of that on LinkedIn, where you can see connections and make those types of calls. So it's been an interesting paradigm. It's not over yet. So adjustments still need to be made. I guess the other thing that I'll put out there is, my God, email. Does email even work anymore? And we're used to kicking off campaigns, sharing ideas, sharing different things that we're doing as a company via that particular vehicle. What I'm finding more and more is that there still is a comfort zone within sales organizations, especially within inside sales. If I have something to follow up on, I feel better than potentially a cold call. So I think it's psyche of the sales teams that you're impacting. But as importantly, I would go a step further to say, don't count on email to generate sales. It's all of the activity that follows it.
Mm-hmm. And so where are most of your leads coming from at the moment, Rich?
So being in the Salesforce.com ecosystem, Rod, we run a heavy channel game because at the end of the day, there are 2,000 system integrators, of which we are one here in the U.S. We are dealing with a mothership that has, in Chicago alone, almost 4,000 salespeople. So you can think of, my God, how would you actually cover that? But being in this game for a long time, it's much like Oracle, SAP, Microsoft. What we do is we get a lot of leads through channel, and then we do definitely farm and mine our existing customer base as well. So beyond that, we do some level of, call it cold calling within industry or cold selling, however you want to term it. But our bread and butter is really relying on channel to sell licenses that we implement.
Okay, fabulous. And Joe, bringing you into this, when we were speaking prior to the panel, basically you suggested the pandemic has opened up opportunities with virtual clients, and you were seeing a lot of your MSP partners being able to widen where their customers are. I wonder if you'd like to come in and talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, traditionally your kind of sales approach might have been to be a lot more regionalized, kind of closer to your office and to what you're used to. But really with this kind of hybrid style workforce, it really gives you the opening to go and attack the industries that you're very comfortable with. If you're in that small business sector that is very open to different styles of industries, then you have really the whole globe to work. Or if you want to just kind of get a subset of that, the nation that you're in, you can kind of focus on that rather than maybe just the regional area that you're approaching. And LinkedIn's a great way of finding new prospects with that, along with kind of maybe old clientele that may have gone on. You can contact them and truly try to add value to their businesses. So, a lot of companies have adopted this remote working, but they haven't stopped functioning. They're probably struggling, maybe struggling a little bit more over the last year. But if you can truly help them, it's okay to reach out and educate them about your solution, whether that means that they're a customer of yours or a prospect. So make use of the opportunities that you have, and suggest ways for those clients to overcome their struggles. And again, it's a great idea to talk to your current customers and see who out there in the industry that maybe they have friends or partnerships that you can help them with as well. So definitely it opens up strong opportunities, not only from a service standpoint, but from a regional standpoint as well.
Okay, fabulous. And David, I want to bring you in on this. Lucy's got a great question here. Retention is a huge issue. Can you recommend any specific strategies that work for a small business with 1 to 2 salespeople? And by the way, keep those questions coming in. They're what makes everything live and pertinent. But let's get specific, David. What would you suggest Lucy begins to look at?
So some of the areas that we've implemented to improve client retention, even in the last 12 months, is the surveys.
I think she's actually talking about salespeople retention.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was customers. I'm with you. Maybe
Yep.
I should read that question first in the chat. Okay, here it is. Okay, yeah, I'm with you. Well, honestly, the easiest way to retain salespeople is to help them close business so they're generating commissions. The people that I've lost in the past, they can't close, right? They can't successfully close. So it starts with the lead generation. I think Trevor hit on this, keeping their pipeline full, helping getting them qualified leads. So your marketing and your lead gen better be doing a good job. Secondly, one thing I do with all my salespeople is I'm not putting them out on an island, right? We're selling a relationship. We have to have conversations with the decision makers in the business, and the technology is running their business, and if technology fails or is not performing, it affects their employee productivity, it affects revenue, it affects profitability. So I'm not going to put my salespeople on an island. I want them to learn from me on how to have those conversations with the decision makers to help them close those new customers. And then as far as that account management to keep those customers, which those salespeople that are the farmers and your account managers are earning commissions on, we want to help them as well. We want to help them with we call their TBRs, their technical business reviews. We want to make sure that they're providing the customer with really good reporting that's understandable, that can give them what they need, that continues to show our value add. We send executives on at least 1 or 2 client meetings a year with the sales account rep, and to make sure that the client is completely happy. Sometimes those decision makers won't tell the salesperson, but they'll tell an executive, hey, I'm not happy with this. So that keeps the commissions flowing. And then the final thing is training. Something that we've all talked about with the pandemic is the paradigm shift. Well, it has shifted. Well, if you look back, it's constantly shifting. It's not just the pandemic. You go back, it was the recession, it was moving to cloud, it was this, it was that. You always have to keep your salespeople trained. And it's not just training on a specific product or a sales engineer, it's communication, it's lead generation activities, it's leadership. So we're constantly putting our salespeople through ongoing training and growing them within the organization. And then lastly, I'll pass the torch. Culture is so important. It's huge. You got to have a fun, great place to work. You got to take care of your people. You have to keep them engaged.
Excellent. So give me just very quickly 2 things you do to keep it fun.
So during the pandemic, we actually had some parties where we have a large space where we drew circles so people could be apart. And, wear a mask and hand out the drinks. So we also did virtual happy hours with the whole staff and, over communicating, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how the business is growing. This is what we're doing to, continue to grow. But then finally, now that we're back in person, I'm actually throwing a big ass party here tomorrow with food trucks, tacos. I'm doing margaritas, tequila, beer, and we invited the whole staff as well as our customers. So you want to constantly keep the interaction going, and having a good comp plan also helps as well.
Yeah.
Salespeople are money driven. And Trevor, talking about retention, what are you guys doing at Hitachi to retain people, and what can a smaller partner do to retain those really important salespeople?
I think, David, you hit every single nail on the head, so to speak. But for me, it's also about the interpersonal interaction you have with your staff. Like you said, try and make it a bit fun. Because I think the kind of fun things and maybe going off the wall a little bit because of the pandemic approach. You've got to try and maintain some kind of momentum with your guys. So they've got to know what their job is on a daily basis, right? So we've already spoken about getting leads, getting them motivated, getting them having activity, right? But equally so, we want them to be closing business and to be successful, because we know success breeds success. And so it's really important for them to be able to feed off from some of the things that worked well for them onto their next opportunity, because there's nothing like closing out a new opportunity or closing down an account or a customer and then getting that order and then feeling really buzzed and motivated to move on to the next one. In addition to that, we talked about training. I think it's training and coaching, and also trying to maintain that the things that you learn through your training can be also used to help them to coach others as well, to coach each other. Because sometimes you have to cut the cord with some of your sales guys, right? They're adults, right? They need to be self-motivated going forward. But equally, you as a person have to be more open, and probably have to be more open than you have been before, because when you're sitting in an office or when you're working face to face, you tend to be very much more focused on business. But I think sometimes people feel that they are slightly disenfranchised when you are working away from the office, when you're working in a silo. And so it's really important to ensure that when you're being open with them, what's going on inside the business. It doesn't have to be gossip. It's just what is going on with the business, what are the initiatives that the overall organization is. And that also comes down from your leadership. But, like all of us on this call, we'll have those leadership calls. And some of that information has to cascade down to your direct report. So they feel that they're engaged in the organization. They feel like they're a participant. But equally so, getting information back from them and feeding that back up through the organization, and them seeing that their question or their query that they raise has actually been filtered up through to through the hierarchy of the business. So they feel that there is something that they're getting back from the business as a result of them putting something in. And I think as well, again, the final point, again, I'll name check David again, right, is having a bit of fun. Doing quizzes. We did virtual emoji games and those kind of things, just to mix it up a little bit. But also bring in external speakers of different functional teams. One thing that we've done, because a lot of the things that we work on requires a lot of financial engineering, and of course it's part of, they need to understand that, but it's really good when you bring subject matter experts in to actually run them through just some of the nuances, ask all the difficult questions, and also just build up a relationship with somebody else inside the organization that they can call upon if they have an opportunity. They have to call me up, and for me to go and call somebody else, I want these guys to be self-starters. So by mixing it up, by bringing other speakers into play so that they can actually understand a little bit more about another functional role that could be beneficial to them in their job.
Fabulous. And Joe, bringing you in, got a great question here. Does the panel have any advice on remote hiring, or do you always need to meet face to face? What's your view on that, Joe?
Yeah, great question. So no, remote hiring is perfectly acceptable. We actually hired 3 reps throughout the pandemic that was purely remote hiring. And best way to approach that is kind of the early steps are pretty much the same, phone calls, things like that. But then, utilize your videos, your video conferencing, and have them pitch you. This is how you're going to be able to essentially understand if you're hiring coachable reps, as we kind of mentioned. The panelists mentioned coaching is key, and developing training and having a good cadence of training is key for your current sales reps. But hiring coachable reps is key as well. So, have them give you some sort of role play where they can actually conduct a demo of whatever that they're currently selling or what you want them to sell, and then give them feedback and see how they can apply that. And you can do that all, through Zoom, or we use Microsoft Teams. And, it's a very approachable way to do it. So it doesn't all have to be in person. You can get a good feel of their personality, see if they would fit on your team, but also can better understand if they're going to be coachable, and give you the ability to develop them as a sales rep to be successful in your organization.
Okay. And Rich, question picking up on that for you. If you're going to be hiring remotely, does that mean you've got a greater geographic area that you can reach out to? Does that make it easier to find new salespeople?
Yeah, good question. It's interesting because sometimes when you're developing a sales organization, you're developing it around a customer base that might be geo specific, right? So the lean has been, hey, if I have customers that are concentrated in a given part of the United States, I want my salespeople, to be call it within reach of that customer base. I think in the new virtual world, it does. And when you look at talent management and talent acquisition, the virtual aspect of our workplace is not going away. I think that, I've seen myriad enterprise customers that are adopting a much more or a much different look at how their people are going to be working going forward. When you throw in, the pure and simple fact that you can save on real estate costs over time, I think we're going to see a new dynamic going forward. So back to the question, I believe that in that setting, you can find the right people, because we're going to be in a virtual state to some extent, I think, on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm. And David, if you look at where the clients are, one of the big challenges that a lot of people are seeing is it used to be cool. You deal with multiple people within a client. You are able to set up a meeting. All the client staff are there. You're sitting in a boardroom. You're sorting everything out. It's very, very different today. How are you dealing with that kind of scenario? How you're training your salespeople to deal with that kind of scenario?
They have to ask a lot more questions. That pre-qualifying time is huge, because a lot of times, like you said, you're just getting one name, one person, and that may not be the key decision maker. Maybe they're the IT vendor point of contact, but they're not going to be the one that says, yes, let's go with Platt, let's sign that contract. So the pre-qualifying questions prior to getting that initial meeting is huge and important. And then when you get that first Teams call or Zoom call, if that person doesn't bring those decision makers on, you really have to lead them down the path where the next meeting involves the decision makers. Otherwise, it's usually a waste of time. I think both Joe and Rich alluded to this, but we're starting to see people wanting to meet face to face, because we're dealing with small businesses. And if that geo, like Denver, wanting to work with a Denver company, a lot of these business owners are, as Trevor mentioned, not wearing the mask, and they're more of that breed, and I'm not going political here. It's just a fact. Right. So I'm telling my salespeople, be ready to meet in person. use the virtual as much as we can, but be ready because I feel it coming. I really do. And one final point, this last year, something I saw that was really cool was the sales cycle shrank because we're not able to meet in person. And I actually saw the average opportunity that would come in, which would normally take 3 to 6 months to close. We were seeing close in 1 to 3 months. So there was an advantage to the virtual selling.
Excellent. And Trevor, just bringing you in on this, you're obviously very virtual. In terms of the way you interact as the sales manager with your sales team, do you have fixed daily calls with them? How do you manage that whole process?
Yeah, it's been a combination of both. We do have the a weekly I'll say weekly forecast call, like anybody would have anyway. But I also have, cadence calls with them to catch up with them on 30 minutes just to talk through, initial business. And I also then have what I call the Friday afternoon call, where it's just free form. An old sales manager of mine used to always have a Friday breakfast meeting before we all went virtual. And it was just an opportunity for everybody to sit down and just talk through their week. And there's always someone in a room who would say something, and then someone say, "Hey, I got the answer for that," or I can help you there. And I think it was a really good opportunity for everybody to get together in a non-formal, non-structured environment, just have breakfast and talk. And sometimes the first time around it's a struggle, but you can build up from there. And that's what I do. Is I every Friday I do that call with the guys, and we just talk. And it's just good to hear some of the issues that they have, but equally some of the breakthroughs that they have. So it's never a moaning session, which is always good. It's a very structured session that just allows us to impart and share information. And to me, that's really important. So but there are some other guys that some weeks I'd speak to them every single day. And again, it's not because they are, we're doing a drill down. It's just simply, hey, look, I'm going to see this client. I need to ask you a question, right? So for me, it's, as we talked earlier about, culture, coaching, for me, it's also an open door policy, right? If you want to get hold of me, you call. And, if I can answer, I will answer. And so that's also about breaking down the barriers where the guys don't necessarily feel that they have to book a meeting or book a call just to have a conversation with me. I think it's important for everybody to be as accessible as possible. And I think on top of that, as I mentioned, my role is global. So, I used to spend a lot of time on planes, traversing the world, and all of that stopped. So going into that virtual world is a challenge, but it's also important to know that for much of us who've been in this game for a while, you probably had a lot of FaceTime with some of these people beforehand, particularly with your clients. So you can roll off the back of that existing relationship, hey, Rich, how you doing? I know it's been a while, but how's your family and all that kind of stuff? But we remember back, 18 months ago when we sat around a table having dinner or having some wine and those kind of things, right? And I think as well, just my final comment, which Jenny's mentioned here about advice about remote hiring, is when you build up those networks of your colleagues as well. I have a lot of trusted advisors in the field or trusted people in the field. So if I'm hiring somebody, yes, I'll do that initial Zoom call. But, I'm looking for a guy in Australia, and my local people there managed to do an interview with that person face to face outside. And so it's good for me to have that network of colleagues as well that I can trust, who can just get some FaceTime with that person, because, humans being humans, it's the only way you're really going to judge somebody, whether you get a rapport with them. Part of your sales 101, right, is building a rapport. And if that rapport works well, then obviously you can get them over to the next, over to the second or third phase. So again, having some trusted people that can maybe just touch base with that person is so important when you're making a decision around hiring.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but I'm going to ask each of you for a final piece of advice. In all your experience of hiring salespeople, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give to people on the call? And Joe, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to kind of piggyback off of what Trevor said, but absolutely use your sales team. Use the reps that have proven success. Utilize them to help you with the hiring process. As you know, they'll have to intermingle and they'll have to be able to be coachable, and they'll have to learn from these reps as well. So definitely utilize all the avenues that you have, especially the current reps that have been proven.
Excellent. And Rich, same question to you.
Yeah, I think I'd leave the group with just an adage that's been around for a while. Your vibe attracts your tribe. So when we talk about culture, when we talk about the interview process, when we talk about how you're describing your company, your products, your customers, think about, how you're doing that and the type of talent that you're trying to bring into the company. It's important. So two other things, though. I have to say that, something that Joe had said around just doing role play now, it's super important. I think that, we're used to having face-to-face meetings with potential new hires, and that really informs us of the type of person that we're in front of. But the advice I'd give is role-playing exercise where you're actually asking them to produce something so that you can see skills around not only how they speak and communicate, but also preparation around slideware, different things that they bring to the table, and their basically their skill set around that. And then the last thing is that something that David had said earlier, I think is super important. You have to stay close to your sales teams. I mean, as leading this company now, I haven't been traveling, so I've been spending a lot of time with individual sales members, the sales leads that I have, and it's super important. Share ideas. See what I love what Trevor had said. Just have informal settings where you're getting people together. We all feel like we're on an island in this pandemic, and the more that you can, gather around at least on a single point of sand, the better off we are. So, thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And David, any final pieces of advice on how to do a better job of managing your sales team?
Oh, I had the answer to finding, not managing.
Well, go tell us about finding.
Let me just throw one point in there, and great stuff. I completely agree with both of you on what you had to say. But one thing we do, which we started recently, is every new hire, but the final test is we call it the employee shadow, and we invite people from all multiple departments, and we'll do a call with the candidate, and they get to ask people from every department. And just to give you an idea, the last one we did this week for a potential new technical account manager, we had 15 employees on the call. It was awesome. And they get to ask the employees anything and everything, but more importantly, the employees get to ask the candidate. And it's pretty cool because all of these employees in each department are interacting with sales. So they're going to need to have a good relationship, a good rapport with this person. And what I found is they're asking questions that we weren't asking. So we're actually doing that now for every role. We started it about 6 months ago, and it's a great way to really see if they're truly a good fit and uncover some things that you didn't think about during the initial hiring process. As far as managing, I go back to what all three panelists have said, especially what Trevor said is, and Rich just mentioned it. You really have to stay close to your people. You really do, especially in these times. It's hard. We've gone through such a emotional roller coaster, especially here in the U.S., with the election and the Capitol and the pandemic. But also a lot of people now are forced to work at home and they're not around their peeps, and right. You can get lonely. The emotional health is an issue. And so staying in touch, making sure they're okay. We sent them gift packages We sent meals, we did virtual poker and game night. But continuing that, what I've learned from the pandemic is you want to stay close to your salespeople, whether there's a pandemic or not.
Fabulous. And Trevor, last, and we are pretty much out of time, so we need to be fairly quick.
Yeah, I'll say very quickly.
Any final piece of advice for the people on the call?
Zoom etiquette. I think, and I'm sure we all know what that means. I think that some people tend to be a little bit laissez-faire when you're on Zoom. So I think it's really important as leaders as well that we all kind of show leadership. So, our Zoom etiquette has to be, absolutely number one, right? We've all probably seen the stories where people come onto Zoom and they've got stuff going on in the background. You've got dogs barking and all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's really important that people show that when you're on Zoom, you've got the right etiquette, because to me, that tells me a lot about a person. What tells me about where their head is. If you're constantly coming onto a Zoom call and, they won't put the camera on, for example, consistently, you've got lots of interruptions. I appreciate there are interruptions, but I think it's just really important to ensure that they're engaged on the call, because it's very easy, and we've all done it, to zone out on a Zoom call, right? Everyone's got Zoom fatigue. So it's just really important to try and mix it up a bit. So I think David, Rich, and Joe have all said the same thing, right? Which is about trying to make sure you build a strong rapport with everybody and making sure that people stay engaged.
David, Joe, Trevor, Rich, thank you for some absolutely fabulous advice. Great panel, great session. Really enjoyed it, really learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone on the call did too. So thank you so very, very much indeed. And talking about Zoom calls, the next sessions will be live in Zoom. So if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see a Zoom link, and there are 2 best practice sessions about to take place in about 10 minutes time. The first is building a USP, and the second is all about remote selling. So if you want to dive into either of those 2 topics, click on the Zoom link and basically you'll be taken into one of those breakout groups. But once again, David, Joe, Trevor, Rich, thank you very, very much indeed.
Pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Likewise. Back at y'all. Take care.
Bye-bye.